Alright all, like the title suggests, in today's video we're going to be running down the specs and we're going to be doing an unboxing of the ASUS Prime B550M-A Wi-Fi motherboard. Let me roll an intro and we'll get into what this board offers and if it's actually worth the money or not. Alright all, like I said in the intro and the title suggests, today we're going to be doing an unboxing and overview. I want to also run down the specs of the ASUS Prime B550M-A Wi-Fi motherboard for you. This is a micro ATX motherboard, so this is based for a smaller form factor PC build. Let me flip you over here and we'll run down through the specs for you. Alright guys, here we are. We're on Newegg. I use Newegg for this because they're pretty, they got pretty good details on the motherboards. We have the ASUS Prime B550M-A Wi-Fi motherboard. It is for the 3rd gen Ryzen. It is a micro ATX motherboard. It does have PCIe Express 4.0. It does come with Wi-Fi 6, and you can run ECC memory on it if you'd like to. It also has a 1 GB LAN. It does have addressable Gen 2 or GB header or a sync. And here's some of the specs for it. It is an ASUS branded. It is the Prime B550M-A Wi-Fi motherboard. It is an AM4 socket. CPU type, built-in AMD AM4 socket, 3rd gen AMD processors. And now I'll hit on this in a little bit here. The chipset is the B550. Memory compatibility it's got 4 DIMM slots, and they run 288 pin RAM modulars on it, which is your standard DDR4, as long as it's desktop memory. Memory standards, it does go all the way up to 4400 overclocked memory, and it goes all the way down to 2133 megahertz. And it also says here that you need to refer to ASUS's memory QVL list to see if your RAM is going to be compatible with it. It does support up to 128 gigabytes of RAM. It is a dual channel system. PCI Express 4.0 times 16. It is the 3rd gen AMD Ryzen processor. It's one slot on it supports the PCI Express times 4 16 mode AMD B550 chipset. It's got 2 of the PCI 3.0 times 1. It does have 6 SATA connectors. That's for your hard drives or if you're running a 2.5 inch SATA drive. M.2 support is 3rd gen AMD Ryzen processor. You got one M.2 socket 3 with the M key. The length's pretty well anything you want to run on it. It does run PCI Express 4x4 and SATA modes. The 4x4 that is that 4 PCI Express times 4, so it gets the really fast speed NVMe hard drives. And it also has a second M.2 socket, but it only supports up to PCI Express 3x4, which is a regular NVMe drive, or the regular SATA mode drives. The RAID, if you're interested in running RAID, it runs 0, 1, and 10. Onboard video chipset, supports by CPU with integrated graphics. You got one D sub, one DVI-D, and one HDMI, which will run up to 4K at 60 Hz. The onboard audio chip is a Real-Link ALC887. It is a 7.1 channel audio sound for you. The onboard LAN is a Real-Link RTL8111H. Max LAN speeds is 10 by 100 by 100 megabits, 1 gigabyte. The wireless LAN on this thing is an Intel Wi-Fi 6 AX200. This motherboard does have Bluetooth 5.1, but you have to be running Windows 10 19041 or later to be able to use the Bluetooth on it. The back I/O ports, you have one PS2 keyboard mouse combo, you have the DVI-D, you have the D sub, you have the HDMI, you have the one LAN, which is up to 1 gigabit. You have 2 USB 3.2 Gen 2, that's the teal ones, Type A's. You got 4 USB 3x2 Gen 1, which is the blue ones, Type A. You have 3 audio jacks. You have one ASUS Wi-Fi modular. Onboard USB, you have one USB 3.2 Gen 1, up to 5 gigabit connections. You have 2 USB 2.0 connectors, supported additional 4 USB 2.0 ports. Other connectors that's on the motherboard is one CPU fan, one CPU optional fan, 2 chassis fan connectors. You have 2 Aura RGB strip headers. You have 1 addressable Gen 2 header. You have 1 SPI TPM header. That's for your temperature monitoring solution. You have the SPDIF out headphone headers. You have the front panel audio connectors. You have a clear CMOS jumper. You have a system panel connector. You have a CMOS port header and 1 speaker connector. It is a micro ATX motherboard. It does say RGB down here under the lighting, but it also has the adjustable RGB. Dimensions is 9.6 by 9.6, so it is a micro ATX motherboard. It's pretty standard size for micro ATX motherboard. Power pin connectors, you have 124 EATX power connector, and you have 1 8-pin EATX 12-volt power connector. That 8-pin is for your CPU, external power for your CPU. Here's some of the other features that it offers. If you'd like to pause the video and read down through some of this stuff. What's all contained in the package, which we'll see if this is correct or not. We have the I/O shield. We have 2 SATA 6 gigabit cables. We have 1 supporting DVD. You have the user manual. You have the 1 times Wi-Fi moving antenna. You have a M.2 SSD screw package. And this motherboard was first available on June the 8th of 2020. Alright guys, now back up to this where it supports Ryzen 3 3rd gen Ryzen. There's something I think I need to point out to you. Of course, it is a B550 motherboard. It is the chipset itself that controls this. But you go over to ASUS Prime motherboard. You go to ASUS's website. You go to the support list. You go over here to the CPU support list. And you notice going down through here, everything is a 3000 series processor. Everything except the 3200G or the 3400G, because them are not an actual 3000 series processor. Them are a 12 nanometer, so they are basically a 2200G or 2400G. So if you're building with this motherboard, you need to make sure you have a 3000 series processor, and make sure it ain't the 3200 or the 3400G. But it looks like they got the rest of them listed: the 3100, 3100X, the Pro 43050G, the 3500, 3500X, 36, 3600X, 3600XT, the Pro 3600, Pro 4650G, the Ryzen 7 3700X, 3800X, 3800XT, the Pro 3700, the Pro 4750G, the Ryzen 9 3900, the Ryzen 9 3900X, 3900XT, the 3950, and the Pro 3900. So if you're going to be buying this motherboard for build, make sure it's a 3000 series processor, or the 7 nanometer I should say, because the 3200 and the 3200G and the 3400G APU processors will not be supported on this motherboard. I know it's got 3000 in the name of it in the series, but they're actually on the 12 nanometer, which this motherboard does not support. The motherboard supports 7 nanometer, which is the 2nd gen 3000 series processors. Yes, I know AMD's got this pretty confusing right now, but it only supports 3000 series processors that does not have the G's on it. So it's the 3200G and the 3400G. It's something you need to keep in mind. But now, since I ran down the specs of this motherboard for you, I'm going to go ahead and unbox it here for you, show you what all comes in it, give you my thoughts and my opinions on the build quality of it, at first glance at least. You know, that's why I don't call these things reviews, because to have an actual review, you need to actually have time with the product, which I don't have. So this is just an unboxing and an overview of the product and what it offers you. And then I'll be back with my conclusion to the video, and I'll tell you what I think about this motherboard. Let me get reset up here and we'll do the unboxing of it. Alright guys, since I went down the specs, we're going to take this thing out of the box and see what kind of build quality it's got to it. I had to cut this little ASUS sticker here that was holding this flap down, lift it up. First thing you're greeted with is your Wi-Fi antenna. Your Wi-Fi antenna here. You're greeted with that first thing on top of the box. Then you lift up this cardboard flap. Then you got the motherboard itself, right there. Take that, lay that to the side for right now. You got 2 more little flaps down here. Or is that just the whole insert? Alright, so the whole insert comes out in one piece. Underneath of that, here's your screws you need for your M.2s. Because it does have 2 of them, it gives you 2 standoffs and 2 screws. And a couple SATA cables for your SATA hard drives, for your SSD, 2.5-inch SSDs or your hard drives. Then you got the all generic back plate here, the I/O shield. Just a little thin piece of metal. And then you got your user's manual for it, which is pretty, it can come in handy. And there's your drink coaster right there, DVD drive that nobody ever uses. These things come in pretty handy if you have problems figuring out where your closed CMOS is, or where your front panel headers connectors is, or where your SATA ports is, or which RAM slots you should populate first if you're only using two sticks of RAM. It does come in a little bit handy from time to time. And with all that, I'll put all this back in the box here. Now here's the motherboard itself, and a static bag. And take it and pop the tape on the back over here. Now this opens up to the side. Okay. Got by the metal back plate. I got my finger here on the CPU bracket. It's plastic. So they need a static bag to the side. There we go. Guess we'll start out with the back I/O shield, or the back ports on it here. Now looking at the back ports of it, we got the PS2 for your mouse or keyboard. You have a couple of SATAs down here for your SATA mouse or keyboard. You got your DVI-D, your sub-D, and your HDMI. You got your 2 TIL USBs. You got your Wi-Fi connectors. You got 2 more USB ports there. You got your gigabit LAN port there, your RJ45. Now this does only have 3 ports for the audio, which tells me the audio ain't as good as some motherboards. Usually the better audio has 6 ports plus the speed diff, but this has only got 3, so the audio may not be very good on this motherboard. Turn it around here, and there's your socket for your AM4. You got your 4 DIMM slots over here, your 24-pin connector, your 8-pin connector for your CPUs up here. It's a normal layout with motherboard. You do only have one PCI Express x16 slot, which is by 4. Here's your M.2 for your x4 NVMe drives. Down here's your second one for your regular NVMe drives or your SATA drives. Down here along the board, all of them are facing upwards. That's your SATA ports for your regular hard drives or your SSDs. USB 3 connector there. It's pretty common layout, pretty sturdy motherboard. Feels like they've done a little bit better than they did with the B450s. And here's a heat sink. You got a little bit of a heat sink here for your power delivery for your CPU. I wouldn't say this is going to be a very good motherboard for overclocking, but you know, they're all overclockable, so you should be able to get a little bit better performance out of your CPU, but I don't think that'd be one of the best ones for overclocking if you're actually looking for an overclocking motherboard. But it seems to be built pretty well. Like I said, it does have the 2 M.2s. It's only got one 16 by slot for your graphics card, which that's pretty typical to only have one 16 slot on a micro ATX motherboard. Up here is a 4-pin RGB header. Down here's a 4-pin RGB. There's your 3-pin ARGB header. USB 2. Over here's your CMOS. Over here's your front panel audio. The fan headers, looks like you got one fan header here, which is a 4-pin. There's your CPU. There's your CPU fan header, your optional CPU fan header. And there's your second system fan or chassis fan header right down here at the bottom. So you got one up here right below the CPU or by the CMOS battery. You have one down here at the bottom of the motherboard. Right there's your clear CMOS jumper right there. And if you can tell, this is a B550. It don't have the small fan on it like the X570 motherboards do. But that's pretty well the look at it. Like I said, it seems to be a pretty strong little motherboard. Seems to be built a little bit better than the 450 motherboards was actually. And kind of a rundown of where some of the main connectors is for you on it. Let me get reset up here and I'll be back with my conclusion to the video. Alright all, I went down through the specs of what this motherboard offers you. I did the unboxing, showed you what all comes with the motherboard. I went over where some of the major pin layouts are for you. Now it's time for my conclusion on this motherboard. This motherboard does have a few good points to it. The B550 motherboard seems to be a little bit better built than the B450 motherboards did. It does have a RGB and 2 RGB headers on it. That's a plus. A lot of the B450 motherboards, unless you go into the more expensive ones, didn't have the ARGB, which that's pretty important if you're looking to add ARGB to your system. It does have 4 slim DIMM slots on it. You know, that's pretty good. You know, if you want to upgrade your memory, just buy another kit just like what you bought and throw in it and double your memory. It's pretty good to have them 4 DIMM slots. When I buy motherboards, I actually look for motherboards that has 4 DIMM slots. The audio don't look to be very good on it. Like I said, you know, it's only got the 3 ports on the back of it, which, depending on how much of an audiophile you are, it is supposed to be 7.1. You know, most better audio solutions usually have a 6 pin layout with a speed diff to it. That ain't that big of a deal to me, but if you're a real audiophile, it will make a difference to you. You know, the audio won't be quite as good on this motherboard as what you may want. You know, the B550 chipset, you only got the one 4.0 times 16 lanes. You know, so if you put a NVMe, you know, the real fast times 4 NVMe drive in it, you can only use one. You know, the second M.2 slot, it runs at times 3 speeds, which is still an NVMe drive, which you can still get pretty good performance out of it, but it ain't the times 4 speeds. Just keep that in mind. Also, with the B550 chipset, you know, you have to have a 3000 series processor, and this excludes or don't include the 3400G or the 3200G. They're more at 12 nanometer process. This motherboard does not support it. So if you're going to be looking at one of these motherboards, make sure you look at that CPU compatibility list and make sure it's going to run the CPU you're going to buy for the system. Now down to the conclusion on this motherboard. Do I believe this motherboard's worth the money? I'm going to say no. And there's a reason for this. And it ain't this particular motherboard what I'm speaking about. What I'm speaking about is the B550 chipset altogether. At the time of the filming, this is July the 26th, when I'm filming this, of 2020. I paid $150 for this motherboard. Actually, I looked on Newegg today. When I bought this motherboard a couple weeks back, that was the cheapest motherboard I could find with the B550 chipset. Now, I looked on Newegg this morning, you can get them for $125 or so, you know. But still yet, compared to what you're losing from the X570 to go with the B550 motherboard, it ain't worth the price. You can get the X570 motherboards for the same price that I paid for this B550 motherboard. What's the differences? The X570 motherboards, they have usually better audio with them than what these B550s are giving you. They also have the Gen 4 or the 4x16 on all slots on the motherboard instead of just the top 2 like the B550 motherboards do, which may be or may not be a deal breaker. You know, it's completely up to you and how you plan on running your hard drives. You know, there's quite a few features on these B550s that's minused from the X570 for the same price. If I was building this for a customer, if I was building for my own gaming rig, I'd have went with a $150 X570 motherboard, got the better features. They normally have better VRMs for overclocking than what these B550s do. When I did the unboxing of this motherboard, I would not recommend this motherboard for overclocking. ASUS is usually pretty good about their overclocking abilities. But because of that little dinky heatsink on it and the way the power delivery chips look on it, I don't think it's going to be very good for overclocking. You may be able to get a little bit better performance out of it than you normally would by running stock, but I don't think it's going to be very good for overclocking. And if you're going to be paying that, $150 for a motherboard, you ought to just get the X570 and get the better power delivery for the overclocking abilities. Would I recommend this motherboard? By first looks at it, knowing what it offers compared to what the X570 does, and this goes for the chipset itself, not just this particular motherboard. I believe I would go with the X570 motherboards. Also, the X570 motherboards will also support older processors. They'll support 2000 series processors, 12 nanometers. These B550s, it's got to be a 3rd gen or a 3000 series processor. It has to have a 3000 in the name of it. But this also excludes the 3200 and the 3400G, the APUs. This motherboard won't support them because that's a 12 nanometer process CPU, and this motherboard only supports 7 nanometer process. So if you got like a 2700X or something right now you're running, you want to wait until the next gen comes out to upgrade your CPU, you can't do it with a B550 motherboard. Only the X570 motherboards can do this for you. There's too much of a difference between the X570 and the B550 motherboards, but no price difference in them for me to recommend a B550 chipset to you. I'm sorry, this is one man's opinion, but this is my honest opinion on these. The B550 chipset does not make much sense to me. If you like this kind of video and whatnot, make sure you go down and give me a like. If you don't, give me a dislike. There's that comment section below. I go through them every weekend on my live show, give you the best answers I possibly can. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn that notification bell, that way you're notified next time I go live or I put out a video here on YouTube. And also, if you're on other social medias like Twitter or Instagram, there's links in the description below if you'd like to come over there and follow me. I won't kill your inbox, but I do share photos of new hardware I get coming in when they do come in, which I buy everything out of pocket, so it takes a while. But I do, and it gives you an idea of what's coming up on the channel as far as videos go. And with all that being said, you all have a good day, and I'll see you in the next video or live stream.